Welcome to Richer Soul, Angus Nelson. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, thanks, Rocky. I'm happy to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up? And how much did your family and school teach you about money?
I grew up in kind of an above median family, I would say. My dad had made some good moves in business and had taken some percentage of the company and until they decided that he had too much of the company. And that's a whole lawsuit that happened. But I grew up, always having my needs met. We played ice hockey. That was an expensive sport. I never really wanted for anything, but I was also raised under a hard work ethic. My dad was from South Texas, had been in the Navy, and then I was raised in Wisconsin with Midwest nice as well as Midwest work ethic. And so my dad would always put us to work, and he wanted to make sure that we knew how to make a buck was to, break a sweat. And that became kind of my hindrance as I've grown is, hey, I got to just work harder, do the grind. And it cost me my first marriage, cost me my first business. It cost me my sense of self and put me into some really dark places. And it wasn't until I got much older that I realized that striving and putting your identity into work and feeling like you have to earn the things of life is incredibly detrimental. The second part closely related to that is, what was the impact of money? My dad always had cash on him. He would, be at the bank and taking out money. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was his generation, his style or whatever, like he loved to have, a bunch of cash in his wallet. And I can remember as a kid, hey, Dad, and he'd reach in his wallet. He had cash. He always had cash. And the beauty of that was I never had any of these like early years of like there's not enough or scarcity or whatever. But later in my teen years, my parents got involved in faith and started, tithing, and they became Christians. And some of the dynamics changed when I was about 14, I guess. And suddenly they stopped going to the country club. They stopped being a part of the big, network of socialites, within the city. And some of the language and stuff that was either communicated, unintentionally or subconsciously was an other, a mindset of other. Then it was scarcity. You want this, you have to go earn it. You want this, you have to go get it. And if you got too much, you took it away from someone else. And the pie would not expand as I've come to believe it now. Back then, it was a fixed pie. And so some of the knowledge that was gained from that was not helpful. And furthermore, because we started getting into some of the faith circles, at the time, the organization we were a part of, had these very like rich people are not good people. Well, the rich people aren't going to get into heaven. And, all these different things, and now as I got older and I started actually reading scripture, I'm like, this is the God that's more than enough, that does the exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask, think, or dare imagine. This is the one that has the cattle on 1,000 hills. This is the one that says, I'm a good father that gives good gifts unto his kids. Like it's changed my entire life when I started to see through a different lens how money works, how money is available, and who you become is not based on the money you have, but rather the money that you have is a product of the human you've become. In other words, we can attract and we can do good things and we can create power in our universe.
Out of curiosity, that shift, did it come around the same time that your dad had the business trouble, or were they unrelated to each other?
Unrelated but related, meaning unrelated in the moment. That was not part of it, but I think and I believe that later there was some scars, I guess, some deep wounds that were probably put into my dad's subconscious that later manifested themselves because of whether it was rejection or whether it was the tension and the stress that put on his business acumen, that he was the bigwig and all of a sudden the rug was yanked out from under him. And what did that do? You know, these are conversations my dad and I have never had because he's never been open enough to say, here's my vulnerability. That was not his generation. That was not his generation.
No, it wasn't. That generation was taught very, very differently, and we're coming through the cycle, and we'll see how it continues again. But yeah, a lot of people think you have to work hard, and then if you have to work hard, well, then you're going to have to go work hard. I don't think that's true at all. And there are a lot of religious beliefs about money. That there are, but it's funny what happens when you stop listening to people and you actually read the book and see what the book says, because there's a story in the book where a rich man has his servants and he gives them each 1, 5, and 10 coins, and the ones who double it get more, and the one who just sits on it gets it taken away. And God says, to those who have more will be given, and those who have little, that little will be taken away. And so I think it's extremely important to stop listening to what people say and go back to the source material to see what it says, because all of that rich evil stuff doesn't exactly exist.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been transformational what I've learned. And I think what's interesting, even with my dad, if he's not going to listen to this, but like his perspective, I think, has changed through the years. He's now like super generous, and he's the kind of guy that'll give you the shirt off his back almost to a detriment. Like he's just so giving and so overflowing with source and supply and help. And it's kind of beautiful to watch, kind of his arc, and then for me, I think as I've grown both as a father, as a business person, I also see the world through a different lens as I got into investment, as I got into, managing my money and my understanding of money. It's been liberating to not feel pressured or to feel valued with or without money. And my life has been one that I think has just been beautiful and adventurous and life-giving. And I didn't have to be killing it when I experienced some of that stuff. And the seasons when I was doing great were no different than the seasons when it wasn't great, except but for what was going through my head. And when I fixed the stuff in my head, other things in my life started to align. And it wasn't so erratic and up and down. What was it for you? Like, how did you get into this space of money and finance?
From the time I was young, I saw wealth, and we didn't have it. I was like, I want money, and I was willing to work for money. And I was willing to get a job or go figure out how to make, keep, and grow money. So I don't know where that bug came from, other than I think being exposed to people not having money, being exposed to money and saying, I would prefer the money side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so being extremely focused on that, almost to a detriment, because then it was chasing the money, so to speak. But I was never so far over the line. I always had some sense of, we don't like the word balance, but I had some sense of balance throughout my life between work and money and between the two. So that's kind of where it came to be. Was there an aha moment for you when that shifted, or when you started realizing, wait, all of these programs in my head are not real and I can change them?
I wouldn't say it was just one aha moment. It has been a series of aha moments. And I think even to this day, I would be remiss to say that I've arrived. No way. I continue to get revelations of storylines and narratives that are in my programming. I like to say your brain's like this supercomputer, and we build stories and narratives, and that becomes the data that we input into our supercomputer. And then our supercomputer dials up all that stuff because it wants to get ones and zeros all lined up. And so it wants to create this equilibrium between what it understands and what it experiences. And so in the past, whatever my belief system was, good or bad, I would create the opportunities, the experiences, the relationships that echoed how I felt about myself, how I believed about myself, how I thought about money. And so as I got into this world of entrepreneurship and I started hanging around with different kinds of belief systems and the way that people carried themselves or the way that they talked about money. I was just at dinner just this last week and I was talking to somebody across the table and we were in this big group and we were talking about crypto and just the volatility that's currently in the market right now. And I was like, I had lost a ton of cash. And I said, but today it's spiking. I just made, and I blurted out the number. And he's like, yeah, man, I did. And he blurted out his number. And another person at the table looked and said, can we stop talking about money at the table? It is rude. And I played it off cool. And I was like, hey, oh, I'm sorry. And what I've learned is people who have money are comfortable talking about money. But people who either don't have money or haven't come from money or aren't, comfortable with the concept are uncomfortable with the conversation of money. And even that in itself was a shift for me because I was raised from a dad from an older generation where we don't talk about, politics and money and da 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 da. Da. And some of that is, just being cordial and being polite. And then there's other pieces like, yeah, no, there's some other contexts where it's completely fine. And again, little pieces that have been unlocks for me to understand my comfort with finances and business. And furthermore, I think there's a piece when I paid for my first coach. I was in a coaching program and I dropped 10 grand to be a part of this program. And for me, I might as well wrote a check, for 100 grand at the time. And freaked me the hell out. And yet I knew it was the next step for me. And one of the primary pieces in the program, even though it was about business and growing an online brand and everything, one of the key focal points they focused on was your mindset. And in particular, your relationship with money. And I think if there was going to be a catalyst, that was probably one of the things that made me see through a different lens. And then prior to that, I think one of the precursors was I interviewed a woman named Jen Sincero who wrote a book called You're a Badass at Making Money. And I chewed up, I have her book right here actually, and I chewed it up and it was like dog-eared and underlined and highlighted and changed another facet of how I believed about money. So between that and then getting the coaching program, those were like accelerants. And then since then, I've read a bunch of books. And each one has shown me something about myself that I needed to let go of. Either I don't deserve, or I'm not worthy, or I don't have what it takes.
I have found entrepreneurship to be a massive self-development growth journey. It's very good at doing that. It's very good at reflecting, showing, but it's also very good when you're successful at building confidence and learning to let go and constantly changing who you are and how you want to show up and behave. And it's funny because you asked me the question about money before. My big aha came much, much later in life because I would just look around. I'm like, I don't understand. We live in America. Okay. People make lots of money.
Yeah.
And there's no millionaires comparatively. Now, today there's a lot more because of, well, inflation. It's not what it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't until I read something from somebody about the whole concept of money mindsets. And I was like, wait, what? People have all these beliefs and things around money and all of these things that I'm like, no wonder people can't hold on to money and make money because they've got all these belief systems. And since then, I spent a ton of time just understanding the belief systems around money and how they come to be, which is why I asked you the first question I asked you was because people said to me, I've never thought about my money story. I've never thought about my money beliefs. And part two is I think everyone thinks everyone's born with a golden spoon. 90% of our guests did not grow up with the situation you had, which wasn't,
Hmm.
super wealthy or anything, but
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of them came from very little money altogether.
Yeah. Which in and of itself is both a blessing and a curse, because it gives you a hunger to like show up to work and to strive and to create. And then it works detrimentally because now you start to realize I've been doing all this either with a chip on my shoulder. I've done it with, a scarcity mindset. I've done it out of exhaustion and desperation. And it's such a crazy aspect. So in our program that we do in our coaching program, we actually have 2 weeks just devoted to this entire concept, just the money stories. And then we step into expansion of understanding that money is almost spiritual, that money is an expression of the value you bring to the world. And instead, we think that I get the money and then that gives me value. It's like, no, bring the value and the money appears. It's a completely different kind of shift, that we're not here trying to earn it because of the things that we're doing. We just become more of who we are out of our value and our ethos. And that will attract the revere of, let me back up just a second. Part of my philosophy is a thing I call the nothingness. Nothing to prove, nothing to lose, and nothing to gain. It's the most powerful person in any room. And in 2005, unfortunately, we've created a culture where we revere the loud and the boastful. And we say that's the person who is quote unquote successful. That's the person who's quote unquote powerful. And yet we don't know that the person, or we don't acknowledge that a person who is comfortable in their own skin, who can make comfort and peace and safety for the team around them, can get way more done way faster than that loud, boastful, crazy type of thing that we seem to elevate in our leadership environments. And we create toxicity. And it's no wonder there's so many people that are miserable in our corporate world, so many people in our political spectrums who are all operating out of scarcity, crazy stuff.
You know what's funny though, and I don't think people realize this. If you go back to the 70s and the 80s and you look at corporate culture, people would like have their heads explode today
Mm,
in seeing how people behaved back then, what they accepted as the norm, which is
right.
totally unacceptable today,
Yeah.
and just the way things were said. So as bad as it might seem, it is a lot better than it used to be. And back then, you couldn't switch jobs, so you just had to deal with it for a lifetime, which
Yeah.
is not fun.
And with the wisdom that we've gained, with the knowledge that we have evolved, we get to do things better. We get to choose to be better. We get to choose to show up differently. And so while we can make a comparison of how things were back when, it's like, but now we have different technologies, we have different philosophies, we have different insights that we never had before. And so we can take a look at some of the situations and challenges that we're facing today, AI disruption, and life is going to be very different in the next 4 or 5 years. Just in general, people, losing opportunities because technology has replaced some of the things that they did. And then where's your value set? If you are beholden to the things you've always done and you can't change, then you're going to miss out. But those who are agile, those who still have a learner's mindset, those who want to lean into possibility and opportunity, suddenly they could find themselves in a completely different opportunity or realm than they ever thought possible, because the speed of transformation, the speed of change is here culturally, it's here economically, it's here globally. Like, it's funny if you stand back and you look at everything that's going on and the grasp for the old while everything is changing to the new. It's a really powerful philosophical thing going on.
It is, and it follows a pattern, and we are where we are supposed to be in the pattern. And so it's going to be a disruptive few years, but on the other side of this, it's going to be a pretty good place to be. But we got to get through, well, we haven't had winter in a while. We're going to have to go through winter. We're going to have to go through massive disruption. And then comes the next stage where it goes back to growth. It's, it's the cycle of human nature. So
Yeah.
you just got to kind of deal with it.
Well, it's one of the things I talk about in my book is, this whole element of being able to see through a different lens to where you're looking at uncertainty. And we as a species are wired for certainty. We need to know that things before us, our next step is going to be solid ground. For whatever reason, that's the way that we see and feel and experience the world. And yet the world doesn't operate that way and never has. And so we've been equipped with this fight flight kind of, mentality that helps us survive. But yet that was great for saber-toothed tigers. But today we don't need to have fight and flight so much. Now we can actually lean into that possibility and permission. And what if confidence isn't something you need for the next step? Because it doesn't exist. And so my book argues that you don't need confidence to do anything because it's an impossibility to be confident about something you've never done. And so as we're looking at all this uncertainty, we're looking at the ambiguity, we're looking at the disruption, it's a fool's errand to think I can't take a bet on myself because I don't feel confident enough. But instead to understand that life has prepared me for this season. I love what you said. We're exactly where we need to be in the cycle, which means you are not broken. You are not missed an opportunity, not missed out on a thing. You're exactly where you need to be. And what can you learn? What can you gain? What can you grow from the things you've experienced? The battles that you've won, the battles you've gone through. And from that, build upon what's next. Because life prepares you for what life has prepared for you. And if we will see through that lens, we don't need confidence to take the next step. We just need the courage to believe in ourselves that we can figure it out and we're going to be fine, even if we fall on our face. We'll just get back up again and we'll keep trying.
That is very, very true. And you keep mentioning your book. So what inspired you to write the book, Confidence Comes Later?
So when I got into coaching a decade ago, I was coaching Fortune 500 executives. I first got into the innovation space by starting an innovation association with a friend of mine, a colleague. And he did all the analyst side and I did all the people side. So I put together all these programming and webinars, and we did 6 live events at different places around the globe each year. And I'd be working with high level, senior level, C-suite, SVPs, head ofs, globals, blah, 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 all the titles. And on one hand, it was super exciting to look at the disruption of the peer-to-peer movement. So at the time, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, TaskRabbit, all this was coming onto line, this crowd funding, crowd lending, crowd sourcing, that was all peer-to-peer. In addition, we were tracking all the funding that was coming into blockchain and into autonomous vehicles, really exciting stuff. And the ability for some of these executives to bring transformation within these large organizations was painful. For some of them, they were challenging entire organizations within their company with these new ideas. And the stress and the performance and their quarterly numbers having to be hit was really, really obvious in our conversations. And one day, one of my clients said, "Man, Angus, you'd make a great coach." And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. So I got into this coaching world. And what I discovered was these patterns. And it didn't matter how successful someone was. It was this place they got to where they would plateau and what used to work doesn't work anymore. And the next step seemed impossible. Either if I take this next step and I fail, what are people going to think of me? If I take this next step and they think I don't belong, what if I get rejected? If I take this next step and I fail, what if I lose everything I've already built? Like all these different pieces that we now know as fear of failure, fear of success, imposter syndrome, like all these things became evident. And so over the years, I've just observed these different elements. And it's like, at the core of this, what's the message that I want to bring to the world? And I finally had been working on this book for like seriously 6 years. And last year I hired a book coach to help me get this thing across the finish line. And he said, anytime you write a book, Angus, you need to pick a fight. If you want to get people to pick up your book, you got to pick a fight. And so the more we talked about it, the more I realized, like, in our self-help, personal development space, one of the things that people talk about is, fake it till you make it. You just have to have confidence. You just have to, all these different terminologies. And I was like, well, that term confidence, I think, is such a misnomer because, and I shared this with my book coach, and he said, so what you're saying is confidence comes later. I was like, damn, that's it. Because confidence is the thing that you only achieve after you've walked through the fire. Once you've taken the hits, once you've gone through the stuff, you can look back and say, I did that. I made that happen. And this builds a belief in who you are and what you're capable. And most people don't take the time to recognize the power that's within, the power of their story, the power of their being, and then giving themselves permission to bring that level of expansion into the world, to be fully alive, to be fully engaged with who they are and the gifts they've been given. And my whole goal is to help people stop sabotaging themselves, stop playing small, and stop holding themselves back from what could be theirs.
Why don't people take action? And you say that in the book, that people don't take action on their soul's dreams.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure out why that is.
It's all the things that have been programmatic to kind of what I was sharing is whatever our background is. You're asking about money, from our family. Is it nature or is it nurture? Is this part of our DNA or is this part of our parenting, right? And we can take a look at all the different things that make us up. And that's only one small piece. But then you have all these different things that happen in your life. And to some degree, you have a motive of success. And to you, as long as you've done that thing and you got to that level, it all worked until it stopped working. And those are the plateaus. That's when we hit a ceiling and it's like, why can't I get past this thing? There's a belief system that we have that I don't deserve. I'm not worthy. I don't have what it takes. I shared that with you before. Maybe that is an income level. Maybe if I have a business, it's my revenue level, or it's a head count, or there's some number in my head that says I can't get past this. Maybe it's I can't make more money than my parents did. And we create all these stories and these narratives, and those become the drivers of our lives. So when we hit these areas where we can't take the next step or we can't take action, is because there's some belief system that we're allowing to have more truth and power in our life than what it actually is. And we're believing a lie that we've told ourselves, and we've believed it to be true. And to us, it is. But to someone on the outside, they can say, you're full of shit. I've seen you. You can do this. You can absolutely do this. They don't have someone to be the mirror because none of us can read the label on our own jars. We need somebody outside, a close friend, a colleague, a coach, a therapist. Somebody says, don't you know this to be true about yourself? And deep down inside, we're like, yeah, I know it to be true, but why can't I act on it? Why can't I believe that I can pull this off? And these are the stories. Those are the narratives. And inside the book, I basically, one by one, picked those things apart. And I revealed to you, like I said, the mirror to show you the spinach in your teeth, to show you the eyebrow that you missed those couple of hairs that are just kind of straggling. You're like, I don't know why it feels all weird. I see this thing flash in my eyes. It's like, because you got these brows are getting wild and hairy. Like, there are different things about our life that to us seem normal. But to someone from the outside said, you realize you just shot yourself in the foot. Do you realize you're not as self-aware as you think you are? Do you realize that you just sabotaged that sale that was right there? They wanted to give you money, but you opened up your big mouth and talked them out of it. Why'd you do that? We need somebody to tell us our own bullshit and say, does that sound right to you? Because we spend so much time in our heads, we internalize and then we isolate. And in isolation, everything feels and seems normal. And the more we become part of this digital world, the more we've actually become internal, which is why relationships are so difficult for people. And they have to go to online forums to find dates because they don't know how to interact with people out in the public anymore. We've lost some of these skill sets. We've lost some of these attributes, but all of them are built on stories. And again, some of the stories are built on culture. Some of them are built by family. And then some of them we actually built ourselves. And we created our own prison cells. And in the book, I call them the shadows. Those are those voices that said, who do you think you are? And it's a lie. And it's our subconscious wanting us to be safe, to play small, to just be in that little box that we've built for ourselves. But we were not built for boxes. We were built to shine. We're built for impact. We're built for glory.
You know, it's funny. I've noticed this with my kids. Anyone under the age of, well, maybe 30 doesn't know how to use a telephone.
Yeah, truth.
They, like, it just doesn't exist. Like when we were kids, we lived on the telephone.
Mm-hmm.
Now you try to get a young person to pick up the phone and call somebody, and it's like, I can't do that. Why not?
Yeah.
It's called life.
Yep.
So, does this happen with successful people?
In fact, it's that curse of success. Some people who get success too early or have a really big swell of success, then it becomes the fear of screwing it up. Or what if my next endeavor isn't as successful? What if this next step goes sideways? And oftentimes it's like a comparison to an author or writer or, a songwriter. It's like, well, the next hit. I wrote this first hit, but can I do it again? And the pressure that rises in someone that experiences success, what most people don't realize is there's a weight to success. And if you lean into it and realize like this is shaping you and molding you, then you realize I don't need things to be easier. This weight is making me stronger so that I can sustain even greater success. It's like walking into the gym where you don't want that weight to get lighter. I just want this to be easier. No, you want it to get heavier. You want it to be harder because in that strain, in that stress, you are actually building muscle and becoming stronger. Life is the same way. And so when you experience stress and pain in the success, what it's actually doing is in the same way your muscles are getting pulled and stretched and actually the muscles are getting broken down so they can rebuild again. Life is doing the same to us. It's challenging our belief systems. It's challenging what you believe about you. As you stated, and I love what you said, and I wholeheartedly believe it to be true, is entrepreneurship is the biggest form of personal development. So at success carries a weight. You lean into the weight and allow it to make you stronger, and you can sustain more success. And what happens is nobody has someone else to come alongside to say, hey, this is good. This is right. You should be experiencing this. It's a sign. It's as if the universe is saying, well done. Let's go to the next level. Come on. And what happens instead is all those voices tell us shrink back. All the voices say, go settle. All those voices say status quo. Have you experienced that, Rocky? Have you ever gone through those plateaus into the new sphere? Gone through the peaks and the valleys?
All the time.
Yeah.
Constantly. Right? You still hit them. Even now, moving up to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. I've just learned though now, I'm like, I don't need to know exactly how to do it. When I get there, we'll start figuring it out. And if I look back at my life, my biggest struggle was always 0 to 1. The moment I got to 1, getting to 100 was easy. It was always going from 0 to 1 that was my biggest struggle. And one that's cost me millions of dollars. But the moment I did that, the rest of it became easy. Because once you start moving, you can figure it out. And we've been through good and bad, and we figured it out. And things just happen. And that's the reality of it. And I think there's a quote in the book that I kind of live life. You either choose to disrupt yourself or life will do it for you. And I think a lot of people get comfortable. They think I have a job and now I have a job for life, especially if I work for the government. Well,
Yeah.
that whole world just got upended, right? And, things will smack you upside the head from time to time.
And what's beautiful about it, and this in the moment doesn't feel so beautiful, in the moment sucks. But the beauty when you start to recognize that, I just talked to a friend of mine yesterday that just got laid off. And it was from a company that acquired his. He'd run his company for 12 years. We talked a few months ago and he said, I'm so frustrated right now because I'm not the CEO anymore. I was like, yeah, you got all this responsibility, but no authority, right? He goes, yeah, it sucks. It's like, because you were born to be a leader. You were born to be the CEO. And now you're frustrated. What do you want to do about it? He's like, I'm just going to, figure it out. I'm going to stay tight. I'm going to sit tight until I decide what my next move is. And then yesterday, he texted me and said, I just got laid off. And I shared with him, remember a couple months ago when we talked? The universe was signaling the time is coming for you to step into your fullness. Time is coming for you to step into the next whatever. You need to start a new thing. You need to partner a thing. Who knows? But my hunch is there's something coming. So yesterday, as I was texting, he was like, it's here. Something's coming. And he was so put out. It's like, look, make some time to grieve. You're disappointed. It was a shock. You didn't see it coming. Give yourself a couple of days and then lean into this one statement. What does this make possible?
And I think for a lot of people, when they get knocked down like that, they can't get back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really struggle with that. And I know for the longest time, I had the belief that if I got knocked down like that, it would be over and there'd be no way to get back up. Now I see the world differently, but I see that as a very limiting, confining belief. And I think most people who are employees think that way. And most employers make them feel bad. Like nobody would ever hire you. Thank God, we still keep you here and that's what they get told.
Yeah.
And you got to break that mold because it's that unfortunate battle back and forth.
I have a client who got laid off on one of the rounds at Cisco, and her dream was to get back to Cisco. Like, I'll just wait, let the smoke clear, and then I'll go back to some of the team members and see, where they can scoop me into the mix. And, it's working together over the last probably 9-10 months. She's made a complete 180. And she said, I'm not built for Cisco anymore. I'm bigger than Cisco. And I have to go build my thing now. And the level of, and this is the key word, is identity. We put our identity in the role, in the position, in the income, with that paycheck. We say, that's who I am. You take it away. Now who am I? And if you've had a job for an extended period of time, it's very easy for you to put all your weight, all your eggs in that basket. However, once you detach yourself, decouple yourself from the identity of the money, of the role, of the position, of the company, you find liberation to go and do whatever it is you want to do, wherever it is you want to do it. You can go work for another company and you're going to be fine. And if that works out, great. If it doesn't, great. Move on to the next thing and the next thing, and let life evolve as you evolve. And let the opportunities rise in stature, influence, revenue, income as you increase first.
Takes time, determination, sometimes a little bit of a helping hand, right? But at the end of the day, and you said this in the book, action beats preparation every single time. And that was what I said to you. I took forever to go from 0 to 1. But once I took action, everything else just happened. But you got to take that first step, which is for a lot of people, the hard part in being able to do that. And there's another quote in the book which kind of leads right into this, which is discomfort isn't your enemy. It's the price of admission to a life worth living.
Come on. Come on.
Well, people don't want to hear that, do they?
It is a permission slip. It is one of these dualities that we have to understand. Everything in life is on the other side of something that scares the shit out of you. The first time when you were a kid, back in the day when they had these, they don't have them so often anymore, but back in the neighborhood pool, we had a thing called the high dive. And the first time you went up on that high dive, you were like knees a knocking. And the only reason why you got up there was because probably the peer pressure of your friends. And you stood at the edge of that board and you're like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And your head said yes. And your knees said no. And for me, my knees said, hell no. And you jumped. And when you hit the water, you came back up again. You didn't die. And then from then on, you just went up and jumped and up and jumped and up and jumped. And then it was no problem because on the other side of the fear was the liberation. It was asking that girl out. It was approaching that dude. It was that what created the marriage and the relationship. It was, putting your hand out to shake somebody's hand and say, hey, do we got a deal? Like every time you put yourself out there, something magical can happen. And so therefore the discomfort should be welcomed, not avoided.
Yeah, that's not easy. Let's be honest, Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. You did mention this, is people need permission. And I've noticed that. It's kind of funny. And I don't know, why does everyone feel they need permission? Because you really don't. And I think it's one of the problems I have. I don't ask for permission. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just go say, we're doing it this way because these rules don't make sense to me.
Because you gave yourself permission, and that's the whole premise, right? We get raised in a culture that trains us that we need outside permission. Raise my hand so I can go to the bathroom. Raise my hand so I can ask a question. I apply to a company or to a school to get into a college, and I need them to give me permission to attend the school. I need someone to give me permission to get that job. I need permission. Like all of our world is based on this external piece. And the whole premise of this book is to go internal and say, give yourself permission. You don't need anyone to choose you. Answering your question you said before is why do, people, they don't like discomfort and it's going to take a while. And I would say even that is a bullshit story. We think these things have to take a long time and that they're going to be hard. But the truth is, we make it hard. We make it take a long time. And the quicker we give permission, the quicker we yield, the quicker we accept that there is a better and different way, the faster we will propel ourselves into possibility. The discomfort is only the flex of that muscle in the same way you go to the gym. Like I said before, like we have to see a different lens. Those that become truly successful lean into this shit. And that's the difference between those that become more successful and those that don't. If you shy away from it, my warning to you is don't expect what those other people have if you're not willing to do what those other people have endured. That's your bullshit of staying safe. That's your bullshit of staying in your status quo. That's your bullshit staying afraid. Get over yourself and stop being so fucking selfish because you are withholding your gifts, talents, and skills and beauty and shine and glory from the world. And you're keeping your kids from experiencing more bountiful supply. You're keeping your spouse from more opportunity to see you in your fullness, in your happiness, in your joy, and in your peace. You stay miserable because you choose to stay miserable. You stay trapped because you choose to stay trapped. You are a powerful motherfucker. Stop making those choices and make better choices. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm just a little passionate about this stuff, if you can't tell already. Because confidence comes later. It always has, and it always will.
People just need to take the first step and go. They don't. And you know what? I no longer try. I just like, hey, you want to go, go. You don't, whatever. And then just like that person said to you at the dinner table, money talk is not polite.
Yeah.
Your whining's not polite either.
Yeah. Right?
Miserable life. Sorry, I got to go.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. It's like, I would rather be the lighthouse than the tugboat. I'm going to live this shit. I'm going to talk this shit. I'm going to be this shit, but I'm not going to drag anybody that doesn't want to go. I'm not going to, I was just had somebody, I was sharing some emails back and forth and coming into our program, and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I'm like, no problem. I'm not going to beg someone to join something they're not ready for. I'm not going to beg somebody that's not ready to like take action. You wouldn't be a good fit. Why do I have to be desperate? It's like, oh, please, I'll give you a discount. No, that's not the one client you want. It's not the person you want a part of your business or your culture. In the same way, oh, would you come work for us? And like, no, I don't know. Well, I'll pay you more. And then you get somebody who comes who doesn't necessarily want to be there, that isn't invigorated and passionate, but you're paying them more money to be stagnant. We make these choices, right?
Actually, I just had a sales call yesterday, and that's exactly what he said. He goes, you're the only person who hasn't tried to sell me on any of these things. Everyone's trying to sell me stuff. He's like, you just chill there. It's like, you want to do it? Great. You don't? Okay. And I let him be.
Yeah, right? It's nothing to gain, nothing to prove, nothing to lose.
No, speaking of business and money, you've used profit first in your business. How's that worked out for you?
Gives me a better sense of life. When I used to run my business ways before, and I can't really give you words how I ran it. I just ran it with, there's money, let's spend it. Versus now is like, no, this money here, this is for the future of the company. This is for rainy day. This is for security of the company. This money here is because I'm the boss and I built this company so that I could get paid. And then this other money is like, this is what the business has to operate on. If the business can't operate on this, then we got a problem. And then the last piece is, again, this kind of liberation piece is like, revenue solves problems. And so, hey, we want to do a certain thing. Well, then what do I have to do to create more revenue? And it just gives me the freedom to be more creative because I've established these backstops versus going into a place of scarcity or a place of desperation to where now I make dumb decisions. I wish I could tell you I was perfect this, Rocky. I wish I could tell you, man, I've got this nailed. It is another piece of philosophy and belief systems that you have to like let go of and stay disciplined in order to set yourself free.
It's funny. I just had a conversation before this one on the other podcast, and we talked about business owners and money and how many of them understood their financials. And it wasn't many.
Yeah.
You think they all know what's going on? Most of them are like you. There's money in the bank account. We got to spend it because in business, we got to spend money to make money. Yeah. I'm like, no, you don't. You do not need to do that at all. You need to hold on to that money and pay yourself and build your wealth and be smart and intelligent with it.
100%. And it's, how we got to Portugal was creating a different business sense and deciding what we wanted to be and do for our family. And in 2022, we were like, hey, how do we shape the business in a way that we can live a life and create a life that we want? And so we made different choices. And some of those were scary. And you had to let go of all the things you knew and different relationships and different social circles and all the things that you held near and dear with your house and say, no, I'm going to go live somewhere else. And I think there's an element of that in every stage of our business, whether that be the financial stages, whether it be you asserting yourself into the marketplace, like all these things endure resistance. There's some level of resistance you have to punch through in order to get free. Disciplining your business in a profit first version is one of the elements that you have to push the resistance because you're not used to operating this way. And yet it's the thing that's going to help you sleep better at night.
That it is. And I, like you, reverse engineered my business to serve my life, not me to be a slave to it. Because that's the last thing that you need is to go that route.
Yeah.
What's your secret to living an abundant life?
My secret to living an abundant life, I would say, is the paradox of nothing and everything. being the conversation we had, nothing to gain, nothing to prove, nothing to lose, keeps you in peace. And the fact that everything is yours. And so I don't have to be in a place of striving. Abundance to me is peace. Abundance to me is magnetism and attraction. And abundance to me is doing it in such a way that I make way for others as well.
Very nice. Yeah, and I like that saying that you had earlier in the 3 parts that you talked about. What did you learn later in life that you wish you'd have learned sooner?
That's a good one. I think the biggest one would be actually around building a business as quickly and as soon as you can, and then turn profits into other things that are revenue generating. Like, I wish I would have thought smarter about how I used money to create more money in investments and in real estate.
And by the way, that is in the Bible. It tells you that. It says, if you don't do that, we're going to take away what little you have. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Just one? Who you surround yourself will dictate your future. Mind the people you spend your time with.
You have to be very, very careful of that.
And especially your partner. Who you choose to marry is critical.
And we really don't teach that. No, not at all. Or how to think through that whole process and even the whole process of dating and everything else. We've probably the last 100 years, we've gotten away from kind of what it used to be like and how there was more thought and connection that kind of went into all of those lifelong decisions.
Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about the book, maybe your coaching services, how can they do that?
You can find me on all the socials. AngusNelson.com is the key place. The book will be available in all of your online retail elements, bookstores in the fall.
Awesome. And we'll put links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, this is fun. What a great conversation.
That it was.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.